up information on websites about the email addresses of all your legislators, as well as their local district offices, so that it will facilitate your getting involved as well in putting on the pressure. There's only so much that we can do as individuals, and we're doing it. But we need, well, there are a lot of aspects to the job, and we need you. We need the hundreds of thousands of students in the UC system, the 1.6 million alumni from the UC system, the 180,000 faculty and staff in the UC system, to put the pressure on Sacramento. A public speech by the Chancellor and me will go only so far.
I heard that recently a professor from Corey Hall was injured by a loose chalkboard that fell upon him, and he was sent to the hospital and broke 4 ribs. And I'm just wondering that how you guys are responding to it, because I know that a maintenance worker had filed an issue report about it weeks ago, but because of the issues of layoff workers, that there were no workers to follow the problem. And so I'm asking that how are you guys concerning the issue of health and safety because of the layoff workers?
About the chalkboard, I'm sorry, I didn't get the whole, because people started.
Basically, there's a maintenance problem, and
a maintenance problem?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. Finish that.
The professor was injured while teaching a lecture, and he was sent to the hospital. I don't know if you guys should have heard or not, because that's a pretty big deal.
Did you mention what building this was in?
Corey Hall.
Corey? First I hear.
That's terrible.
You know, there's a certain level of ribbing and a certain level of cynicism and a certain level of even disrespect that I would expect from this type of an event, because people are very frustrated and they're very hurting and they're looking for answers, and I, as a senior administrator, need to be providing those answers. However, at the same time, I want us to also remember that there are 34,000 students. There is one dean of students. There's not 30,000 deans of students. And so I don't always, should I always know every single thing that goes on? Probably do I always? I don't. And so I ask for grace and patience as I hear things, and I will extend grace and patience back to you. So back to your point, this is the first I've ever even heard of this particular issue over in Corey Hall. I had not heard of this, right? So as now that I have this information, what exactly are we doing? That for me would be following with the provost with regard to that particular professor and the department chair, right, with regard to not only the injuries, but to make sure that that injury does not happen again because of some other faulty maintenance issue.
It wasn't a faulty maintenance issue. I think it's the issue of laying off workers that they received the job.
That they what?
And the reason why you're saying that one person cannot understand how all the different issues that go on, I'm sorry, but from what I've heard, administration and managers have grown 200% over the last few years. So I don't know what you guys are managing when you guys have so many people holding positions.
I received the email invitation about a week ago for this event. I was told that there was going to be a dialogue and exchange of ideas. And so with that in mind, as a student, I don't feel like my voice has been heard and I've been valued as a contributor in this UC financial crisis. I feel like decisions have been made behind closed doors, and I felt like the $3 million private consulting felt like a lack of trust in the collective creativity and wisdom that exists on this campus. And then so a young lady asked this before, but I wasn't quite satisfied with the answer, but Chancellor and Vice Chancellor, I was wondering if you're serious about receiving input and involving stakeholders, especially students, in solving the UC financial crisis, what is keeping you and the UC president from making the budget completely open, public, transparent, and understandable to students? Because I don't feel like we can truly be involved unless we can understand what the budget is. Thank you.
We answered it for the UC budget. For the UC Berkeley budget, we answered it. I don't have the answer in terms of when the UC regents are going to post that information.
What is keeping you from making that available?
As I mentioned, the Berkeley budget primer is being edited right now and will be up on the web before the beginning of December. So it's finishing up its process and will be up then.
Well, what about the UC system? That's the answer that you guys should get for us.
Hello. Last year, a lot of the language classes were cut, specifically the East Asian languages and the Southeast Asian languages. I want to ask, what is the logic behind cutting languages for API students, and how are you planning to address this as our leaders?
The budget cuts were restored to those departments well in time to restore that curriculum. The appearance of cuts was a product of decisions made as larger budget cuts rippled down. So I think the answer is that the cuts were restored last year. What this year looks like remains to be seen because of the late notice we got on the budget cuts this year.
In that case, I'm asking then for a lot of the programs that are specifically for students of color, for the Multicultural Center, for the Bridges, which helps with the retention and recruitment. A lot of their programs have been cut. How will you address the programs? How will you address these cuts that have been affecting students of color and the diversity at this campus?
You're gonna have to forgive me. I was not being a good steward. I was whispering. So the last part. The cuts for Bridges but there was another part of that.
And many other programs that are at risk.
Well, again, for those of you who don't know, the Bridges Multicultural Resource Center receives on average, not on average, I think their average is around $450,000. That's from a multiple number of sources. That comes from $50,000 that the Chancellor gives. It comes from $78,000 of SAPEP money, which are outreach dollars. It comes from Prop 3 monies of the ASUC, and it also comes from funding streams that each of the RCs apply for every year through the ASUC budgetary process. So on average, it's around $420,000, $450,000. This year, their budget was cut from the SAPEP monies and from the Chancellor's allocation monies. My office actually oversees those funds. It's $128,000. Those funds were cut proportional to the cuts that we took in campus life and leadership. So in my area, which I'm responsible for, my budget was reduced by over, well, there was $300,000 from permanent reductions, and there was $150,000 from a one-time allocation, and that money was, so we cut the budget proportional to what we received as a cut. So when that looks like for the future, I think until we have more additional funding, we will continue to see program erosion, particularly in the area of campus life and leadership. I have cut 4 positions out of my area of about 45 staff. So there will be there will be a reduction to the programs and services that we have until we have the additional funding to do that. And we recognize that that's going to impact not only students, but all the people who receive our services through the programs and services that are in campus life and leadership.
My name is Yvette Palarka. I'm a public school teacher here in Berkeley. Got my master's here as well in education. I'm also here representing the civil rights group BAM, by any means necessary. And I have 2 questions. One, given the fact that this forum has exposed that we have a real crisis of leadership here at this campus and at the UCs, but we have a growing movement of students and workers who are fighting for the right to public education and are developing the new leadership. Then Chancellor, with all the influence that you have that's already raised a $1.5 billion war chest, what will you do to direct some of your friends to help students get to Sacramento and pay for the buses to be there marching in the spring? So 2, I also want to ask about UC's